Okay. Good morning, everybody. Happy morning. It's good to see a lot of happy, familiar faces here. We're here to talk about and start a limited reopener with regard to the organizational and funding shift of the ACMA office into the EMS department. Number one, thank everybody for being here. And I think I want to just give an overview of how we're doing today so that we can see how we're gonna utilize the day. I think first off, I'm just gonna give my introduction, then I think we should all introduce ourselves. I know that I recognize a lot of faces in here, but there's some that I don't recognize. And just for the purposes of the public and that way we all know who's sitting at the table right now and who we're talking to, et cetera. So we'll do introductions, then I plan on proposing some ground rules and what I did, and we'll go through that. And then after we do the ground rules, and I think that we can identify what articles and sections are impacted and that we'll be talking about during this limited reopener. And then we'll move from there. So first off, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Roxana Stevens. I'm outside counsel for the city of Austin, and I'm helping with these negotiations. I'll be helping the labor relations officer, and I'll go ahead and pass it off.
Good morning, Sarah Griffin. I think we all know each other, but Chief Labor Relations Officer, and looking forward to a productive and hopefully completely uncontentious set of negotiations to work this through.
Morning, Ben Phillips, Law Department, also interim Deputy Labor Relations Officer. Good to see y'all. Look forward to working with you.
Morning, Teresa Gardner, Chief of Staff for the EMS Department.
Nice to meet you. I'm Rebecca Kennedy. I'm the interim Human Resources and Civil Service Director.
I'm Keith Noble, Division Chief at Austin Travis County EMS. Oversee one of our shifts every fourth day or so.
Melissa Hall, I'm a district commander with EMS.
Hi, I'm Kim Griffith. I'm a captain. I work with our integrated service division, specifically over mental health response.
Selena Shia, president of the Austin EMS Association and captain at Austin Travis County EMS, and very excited to be here.
Houston Tower, General Counsel, Austin EMS Association. Congratulations on being chief now. It's awesome, Sarah. Look forward to working with y'all. Totally uncontentious as well. Down for that.
Tyler Green, EMS Clinical Specialist, Communication Division.
We have more of our team members back there.
Oh, okay.
If you'd like.
Okay. Good, we're out, or do we need to head over there? So we got Jim.
No, you're good there.
Phil Marquare, clinical specialist, assigned to the rescue at Cascade Division. Brian Fitzpatrick, district commander, field operations. Good to see everyone again.
Brian Green, district commander to HK.
Kenny Bales, I'm a captain in our integrated services. So again, congrats, Sarah.
And we have resource people. You all know Erica Vieira from our office, Sylvia Flores, and Laverne Morris Parker.
Okay. I think with that, we'll go ahead and I'll present the ground rules that we're proposing. And what I did just out of efficiency, because we've already had agreed ground rules the last time, I went ahead and pulled the ones we had last time and I'm going to show the red line changes to show how the ground rules are being tailored to fit this limited reopener.
And I believe I've sent you both the red line and the clean. Okay. So that way we have a basis to work from.
Make sure everyone can see that. Okay, so I basically worked off of the ground rules that we've already worked on because we worked long and hard on those. So the title, of course, changes to the 2024 meet and confer negotiations for the limited reopener. And the first proposed change is negotiating teams, and I took this language directly from Article 26, because we're here on that limited reopener, subject to the Article 26. And so it reads pursuant to, it should be we'll take that out. It should be pursuant to Article 26 of the agreement between the City of Austin and the Austin EMS Association effective October 1, 2023 through September 30th, 2027. This is a limited reopener for the narrow purpose of negotiating the impacts of the organization and funding shift of the Office of Chief Medical Officer and supporting positions to the Emergency Medical Services Department, with the principal parties being the City of Austin and Austin EMS Association. And this is language that was taken from Article 26. Number 2 remains the same. Number 3, this, I propose, this was left in, I think it was just a typo of what we did. I propose that we take the crossed out word out just for, just to make it clean. But that was just a red line, I think, that was left in the last time. Number 4, now we know that we're here just to work out how the shift is going to happen, shifting OCMO into the EMS department and the impacts of that on the contract. So because it's a narrow purpose under that Article 26, we're proposing that each negotiating team that's at the table and sits and discusses and negotiate be no more than 6 at this point. That way we can have those negotiation discussions. We did, of course, as we did before, we will have resource people available to come make presentations, give information. But we know that those resource people are here to provide us with information, and we're not going to start negotiating with them, kind of deal. And that's just because we know that we have a limited time through the Article 26 process. We want to make it efficient and we want to make it really productive. And because we're just dealing with the impacts, we think that 6 on both sides is more than plenty, and we can work with that, make our work very fruitful. Number 5 remains the same. 6 and 7 remain the same. The only thing that changes in Article 8 is the reference to the updated the current contract. ABO requests and approval procedures are provided in the current agreement, the agreement between the City of Austin and Austin EMS Association effective October 1, 2023 through September 30th, 2027. So that was the only change. We just updated the contract name. On Section B, which is the process, we took out, this was where last time we had IVB method, et cetera. Here we've already agreed to the process as it is in Article 26. So we're changing it to, or proposing to change it to reflect Article 26 and say both parties agree to utilize the process set forth in Article 26 of the agreement unless modified by the parties in writing. And Article 26 provides when we start, the timeline, and the things that we're to do. So we're just going to follow what we've already negotiated. This should be number 1. B2, this should be B2. This is kind of establishes a cutoff date for identifying the articles that will be placed on the table and that are impacted by the shift. We currently have today, I was hopeful that we would be, hit the ground running and start typing and be, but we're willing to talk about that. We just want to make sure that we get, that we address the impacts and that we know what we're going to be talking about before we actually start negotiating. I think that's a really important part of the process. So that's what we propose. We're willing to talk about the date. If we're ready to go today, that's great. If we need another day or, couple sessions, just let us know. We're amendable to that. When we're going to be identifying the impacts on the contract. Now, remember when we negotiated, it's the impacts on the contract. It doesn't automatically open up the entire contract. So what we're doing on our side is being really specific. We're looking and saying, for instance, Article 1, section, they all have different sections. sometimes there's only an impact to one section, not rest of the section. So what we're doing is we're identifying the article and the sections. And that's what we are contemplating with this, the language saying specific articles and sections to be placed on the table and negotiated. So I think if we can just narrow the focus down to what the impacts are, we can get the, talk about it, negotiate it, get it done a little bit more quickly and be more specific and focused on that. Nothing changed on 3. The number's a little bit off. Nothing changed in the rest of section B, except for in this last paragraph, we've identified that it's not an entirely new meet and confer agreement. It will be an amended meet and confer agreement. That's the context of just identifying what the result product or document will be out of these negotiations. On the scheduling, we didn't change anything except for when we may agree to extend the negotiation sessions. Article 26, I believe, provides for about 90 days of negotiating. So we started with today as the initial date, and we kind of calculated that. And what we looked at was about 2 weeks before the end of that, so that we can just, put in the time if we needed and extend them to outside normal business hours and on weekends. And we identified that as April 15th. Section E remained the same. Section F remained the same. Section G remained the same, and section H remained the same. Those were the only proposed changes to tailor the ground rules to this specific limited reopener. Of course, we changed the agreed date and the titles here at the bottom now that Sarah Griffin has been named the Labor Relations Officer. And I believe we have emailed those to you. Aside from the little typos that I've identified, the substantive part is what we have proposed. And we'll let y'all talk about them, bring up any questions that we can answer. And hopefully we can get some ground rules set today so we can set our teams and move on to identifying the issues that we're going to be talking about at the table. Anything else, Sarah? No.
One question on section D, scheduling 3, because we do have the ability to extend for an additional 30-day period after that initial 90 days under 26. My only suggestion is that we add in under the ground rules that we can meet at time to make it come to an agreement to extend
Okay.
if needed.
I think that
Without
may,
thinking of the need.
I see what you're saying, and we may need to add just something to reiterate that in that section.
I didn't know if it was in there, I'm sorry.
In B1, that process, we're saying we're going to utilize the process in Article 26 unless modified by the parties in writing. But you're right, it may affect that April 15th date. So we can add something saying like, unless modified by the parties in writing pursuant to the.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that
We've never used that before, and it's a may agree to extend negotiating sessions, so we can put whatever we want in there, quite frankly, if you want to
Yeah, I mean, I'm just making sure that we.
put a comma at the end unless agreed to, but yeah. That's
If
simple
we
enough.
need to burn the midnight oil, we will. I would.
I think we've all been pretty good about meeting enough to get things done when we need to, but yeah, we'll throw something in there.
And we've been, we did get the version that y'all sent over a few days ago, so we've been working on them.
Okay.
So we'll share what we have. We have something ready today.
Okay, so do we want to caucus and get our ground rules all set before we talk about what articles we think are going to be on the table? Because that kind of defines the teams and how we're gonna approach things for sure.
Yeah, it's up to y'all. I think it might take us a little bit longer to really hammer in the ground rules, especially because we have a lot of new members on our team. And so we're ready to kind of get an idea of what y'all are thinking about which articles, y'all envision wanting to reopen and share our list as well. So if you want to do that first, and then we can kind of regroup.
I don't think it would hurt for us to go ahead and do that now. And we have it in kind of two different formats, and I think it's gonna be best. What we've done is we have a list, Article 1, Section 1, but we also have the document to work from that I sent you. We have them highlighted with the specific sections so that we're kind of the firm belief of let's put on the table what needs to be on the table and not try to put in the whole article contextually. You are perfectly capable of seeing it in context as you walk through it in your caucus room. So literally describing what's on the table, we have highlighted, and certain of them, it's easy to put in a certain section in, for example, promotions, and in Part C for all of you, so it's not as clear, but we have a highlighted document with our comments that show that we're gonna give you, but I think walking through that document is probably the easiest so that you can kind of see our thinking process and see if we're close, which hopefully we are. And it may not be that we're close on the answer, but we might be close on what the questions are.
Yeah.
Or all. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
everything's,
I think we need
finish
to know
today.
what the questions are before, right, narrow down the questions that we can,
Yeah, so I think just to share on the screen would be the highlighted document to walk through.
okay. I'm gonna share this. We're
We can do
gonna,
that first. if you want.
Yeah,
Quickly show that one.
what we're gonna do is we're gonna send you two documents. One is just what we have outlined. That way you have an index, so to say, of the articles that we have looked at and that we have determined are impacted by the shift. And we've identified not only the article, but the section numbers. For instance, just in the first one is Article 1, Section 1. Article 2 is, it's not necessarily sections, but numbers 1 and 14. So I'll send that to you, so that you have an index when you're looking at the highlighted document. And with that, I will also send you this highlighted document. Make it a little bit bigger. Where it has our conceptual ideas and indications of where we see the impacts happening on this shift. Of course, we'll deal with the index as necessary. We're going to be looking at the substantive items. First off, on Article 1, the date of agreement will of course need to be changed or reflect any amendments that are going to be effective resulting from this reopener. And in Article 1, all we see, I'm going to put my index over here so I can see this, if you don't mind. I think in Article 1, all we see is Section 1. In Article 2, we have identified, of course, number 1, where we're going to have to identify and kind of clarify for purposes of anybody looking at the agreement that there were amendments that were going to be effective as a result here. We're going to have to put the effective date, et cetera, and figure out how do we want this amended document to look so it works for everybody. The next item we have identified is, of course, I think the core to the core issue that we need to address before we go into anything else here is number 14, the definition of uniform staff. That's probably the first thing that we need to tackle before we go into all of the other issues, because it really we need to know who we're talking about here. Article 3, we did not see an impact. We did not see an impact on Article 4. The next impact, and we have our conceptual questions here on the impact, is Article 5, number 1. Of course, we'll have to add a new section or a new sentence or something that identifies when the payroll deductions on union dues will be taken from any of the new people that have been shifted into the EMS department.
We presume you agree on that.
Exactly. Oh, and let's see. Yeah, we'll probably need to add a new section or, a B or whatever, a new an F,
And
add a new F.
26.
The next one is Article 6, of course, we're going to have to address for the fiscal year, this year, 23-24, any new pay scales that would be related to the positions that are being shifted in. And then we'll probably have to add a new section F in order to address the outlying years to include those, the new positions that are coming in. Because they're not, as you know, they're not contemplated in the current ones because the pay scales don't include them. So it might be, you know, we might just have to add a new section, say, okay, here, and then later on we'll integrate them at the next contract. Step placement, of course, is impacted, so we'll have to look at that.
So what, and just so you know, a lot of these are highlighted. What does most recent date of hire with the department means? That's our questions on these that are highlighted.
Right. Section 5, service incentive pays. What is it, you know, the effective date of that and how will they be calculated? And of course, higher class pay, are the new positions going to be included in, or is it, there's any kind of higher class pay going to be contemplated? We need to discuss those issues. That's all I have from Article 6. On Article 7, we did not see an impact. Article 8, Section 3, separation pay for sick leave hours and accruals. We need to figure out how that's going to be integrated in and discuss, you know, hours accrued, what people already have.
Not on this one. This is more the, what does actual service mean?
Oh,
How
the
do you
actual
determine that
service.
date for these people? The accruals were in the other section.
Oh, okay. I got ahead of myself.
It did.
But it's all
Now we can say
related.
it right now.
And it's all related. Here it is, the accruals. Next is Article 9. We think that the impacts are going to be on Section 2 and Section 3. That's going to have to be related to the accruals that will happen in the caps, and how that will be addressed. Same thing for sick leave on Section 5. We did not see an impact on Article 10. We didn't see an impact on Article 11. Article 12 promotions, of course, there's an impact on that. Not necessarily the parts that are here, but we'll probably have to address the positions being shifted in a new section.
And just for kind of a bigger, a broader concept, the concept that you had talked about early on in our last negotiations of kind of having a third pillar. We're envisioning it being in health and clinical services, and then adding that in as a new part C, and then moving everything else down to show where those, how those work. But, right. Yeah, we had started just a little bit at the beginning of the last negotiations. Well, not even just a little bit, for a bit, before we moved into the reopener concept, so. We didn't try to recreate the wheel.
That's the long article, 26 pages, I think. We're coming up on article.
Well, I think you missed a part though.
No.
Yeah, you did, on page 30. Yeah, although we do, although we are gonna add it, we also have part C, section 1A, the promotion by appointment for division chief and assistant chief.
Oh,
And we have a comment there as well to adding the new division of clinical services there, but also negotiating that particular section.
And then, next one is Article 13. On the hiring process, we'll be having to address the we anticipate would be called paramedic practitioners coming in and the chief paramedic practitioner. And those will probably be new sections added to Article 13.
Yeah, we have that as,
And I think there's some language that we've worked on previously, or at least introduced.
Back here on the direct hiring process. We don't anticipate any impact, or we didn't see any impact on Article 14. No impact on Article 15. No impact on Article 16 or 17. Savings clause. No impact on Article 18. No impact on Article 19. 20, no impact on 21. 22. We saw that we need to address the term of the agreement, to address the amendments that would be effective after this negotiation. And that's on section 1. And then the last thing that we have on our list is, of course, Article 26 no longer applies because now we're doing the reopener. Of course, we will use it for the process, but we will need to use this article and replace it to discuss the initial terms of the implementation of the funding shift and any implications into the contract. For instance, how is this shift coming in today? And then how are we going to deal with moving them into the EMS department? And then how it will look forward and the implications of that in addition to the amendments that are being made.
so let
So
me try to explain that a little bit differently. And I tried to make a note there that may or may not make sense to you. We envision Article 26 is what's happening right now today, the day we signed the contract, how do we now look? And that would address such things as, do I still have my old sick leave if I came from OCMO? What do I accrue starting with the next pay period? When do I get my first paycheck under this? Am I redlined? Which, just so you know, we're not planning on taking any money from anybody. So we've told you that before and we're there, but how does it look today, right now? Every other article in this whole agreement has to do with moving forward. This article is going to say, so we have brainstormed, you surely have, and we'll continue together to brainstorm. What do we need in this article? What does it look like today? But that's what we're intending on putting here to replace this.
I think we
That
had
makes sense.
similar thoughts for Article 26, removing a lot of the existing language and adding in just how we envision a lot of those things happening, MT counts, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
we definitely have thoughts there too. So,
Yeah. And anything that we haven't caught in other places, this starts something, if it's not mentioned elsewhere in this agreement, then as of May 1 or whatever date that we choose. So just kind of a catch-all.
and that's what we have on the issues we see are impacted.
We did not get as specific to note the different sections, but you'll be glad to note that our articles are almost completely identical. The only one that we had seen to add is in Article 10. And it's just a very small issue. There's another issue that we had noted that we wanted to look at Article 15 and 16. But in looking at those articles, we decided that what we're trying to accomplish probably doesn't fit in those articles. And so we created a new article. And so theoretically, that should be Article 17 because it follows right after. And basically what that is since we're returning to one department, we do want to look at clinical reviews and just have some basic guidelines since it will be a lot of uniform staff that are running those types of processes. So that's just to give you all a heads up, but I think that's the only additional topic that doesn't really have a place in the existing articles that we wanted to bring up. And our sections do look a little different. I don't have them all written down. I didn't know we were gonna get that granular, but the article list is the same outside of that concept and Article 10.
What is Article 10, ABL?
ABL, yeah.
I think that's more of a reflection of something we discussed.
Yeah.
Last bargaining session.
It's-
I've never-
So.
Okay, so as we go through, what we're going to be discussing, what did you, are you going to be presenting what you thought, how that's impacted so that we understand? Because we did not see an impact.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you how you want to progress forward in the afternoon. I don't know that we'd even be necessarily ready to show you something similar to what you presented us today. But I think, for example, you know, if y'all already have an idea of what definitions of uniform staff wanted to look like we'd be happy to go and start looking at those concepts even. As much as we're, you know, I just have to get my team to agree on a lot of the other issues. And so we just need to kind of do a final review of those issues.
Sure, and we had chatted a little bit, and just for everybody else's and the public's edification, the reason the definition of uniform staff is so important is because that basically determines who the union will be representing moving forward. So without knowing that, a lot of times you may not know whether or not something is impacted or not. So we kind of agreed today that we would look at ground rules, we would look at what articles specifically we thought would be impacted, and that we do have a definition of uniform staff ready to work from. I don't know if you've done the same or if you just want to work from ours and we can kind of go back, you know, however, we put a lot of thought into it and we genuinely believe that you're going to agree to it. Like, I am not kidding you. I am not kidding you. We truly believe that you're going to be very impressed.
Yeah, and I'll just tell you, totally open mind about it. We'll work with y'all and talk with you and see where y'all's legal analysis is at this point. And really, that's what it's ultimately my advice on this to the union is base this on a legal opinion on how those, on this actual governing or the codes that we're basing them on. And so I'm happy to work with you on everything.
Okay, sounds good. So why don't we take a quick caucus, let us polish off that. You can start looking at your, at the ground rules, start going through that with your team and any new team members who may not, you know, have heard the original concepts from which they were based. Even if you don't have your articles that you think need to be negotiated, delineated as such, how we did it, I think ours are like our two documents together that we're sending you, which is one is the list with the section numbers and the other is the same highlighted with, and we're sending you the comments included so that it's not an answer, it's just where do we think this belongs sort of thing on some of them.
Yeah.
Then we can start doing that and then check back with each other in, what time is it? 38. And let's check back with each other at about 11:30 and see where we are.
That's right.
And kind of plan on what we're gonna do from there.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
your,
That's what the double B means. We received your markup on the ground rules, had a quick look at that. Did you want to go through it really quick with us? We can put it up on the screen for you.
And I noticed that y'all are now moving to track changing as opposed to red line, if that makes sense. Last time we did it differently, so I just wanted to verify if that's the way that y'all want to do it.
However, you know, I'm amenable to either, but I agree we should decide at the beginning how we want to do it. What's your preference?
Kind of like, I think that the actual redlining and everything is a bigger pain, but it makes sense because it's hard for us to then cross out what y'all did and for that to be notated when we do the track changes. Does that make sense? Cause like, I'll give you an
Yes,
example.
and the other, no, I totally agree with that. The other problem is if you do something and Houston does something, it's in two different colors unless you are like magically attuned to how to do it perfectly. And, you know, we may have three people working on one document and then wait, is that the association? Is that, so the actual strikeout and legislative, we good with that?
Yeah, the way we
Okay.
did it for the last contract.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I think something happened here, like when y'all, it was at 12 committee members and then y'all put it to 6 and then I did the track changes back to 12, but then it never shows that y'all had ever wanted 6. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so.
Yeah.
Okay. So we really only made 3 changes. Houston changed some of the language in, that section 1, to more closely reflect what we felt like was in Article 26. I don't think there's any substantive changes there. If you scroll down and see, we just redlined that because that was technically a change. And at the time, we didn't know that that was just a typo from last time. So all we did is change the word from narrow to limited because that's what's in Article 26. And scroll down further.
Over here.
Oh, yes. So we moved back to 12. We had already had, you know, our membership vote on the bargaining team, have our board select, so we don't really have a way to narrow it down to 6 people. I don't think that that's gonna prevent us from working together, but that's why we left it at that number, because we just, you know, didn't have advance notice that we wanted the teams to be smaller, and we had already voted on them and chose them.
We can talk to them when we show the language. Okay.
And then, yeah, I think it's under process, but not there. Scroll down further. We agree with all of these changes. So, on this, the parties have set, so y'all set today, we just set a month. We think that that's about 1/3 of the way through. One thing that we recognized as we were going through the contracts is just how many, and I think y'all probably recognize this too, but how many places we were like, oh, like I would have never thought that an issue is gonna come up from this section, and then we found out it did. And while we've done a pretty thorough search, and it's not like I think by putting February 28th, we're gonna reopen drug testing or something else. It's just, we just felt like this would be a safe period in case other stuff came up. But we, you know, from what we have, it already looks so similar to what y'all have, but we just wanted to put that in there to be safe. So that's the only 3 changes we have.
Okay, then I think with those explanations, I think we'll go ahead and give you the response that we crafted. We wanted to make sure there wasn't anything we were kind of missing substantively.
You sent me 2 documents.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, this is the response right here.
Yeah, and so we too had trouble with what was, so we'll just go through it pretty much from scratch, I think. I tried to highlight most of it, but not in the first part, I guess. Okay.
Okay. first off on the number one, for the whole purpose and scope of what the limited reopener is, we saw what you were doing and went back and we agreed with that. And what we went ahead and did was there was still a couple of parts that were missing on there were 3 separate distinct issues that were outlined. And so we literally just cut and paste the Article 26 to include all of that. And so I think where the change is and we accepted limited purpose, and it would be of negotiating any impacts of the organizational or funding shift on the compensation benefits and working conditions of the existing uniform staff as described in the aforementioned agreement, which is the current agreement. And this is the words just right from the Article 26. The determination of what constitutes the new definition of uniform staff moving forward and the compensation benefits and working conditions of any newly incorporated uniform staff holding such positions under the new definition. And that is taken from.
Yeah,
so
remember we had the 3 parts last time and it's like, wait, what about, so we had forgotten that too.
So we agree with that. And so we reiterated exactly what was in Article 26 and just look it over. But I think that's going to be agreeable. And we agree with reflecting exactly what it says. Of course, we agreed to that, just the correction of the typo. With regard to number 4 on the members empowered on the team, the negotiating team members. Now, what that is to say is that we've moved it back to 6. We're not saying that you can't have 12 people on your team. What we're talking about is having the 6 people here at the table having negotiation discussions. And one of the reasons is this is a limited reopener with streamlined issues and a streamlined process. It's a very straightforward process that says, hey, we were going to try and get this done, and we're just working on the integration at this point. I think it's a lot of, I don't think there's going to be anything super controversial, or I don't anticipate it being that way. And so when we're looking at this, you can have who you need on your team. You can have your resource people, you can have people here, but we're talking about the team members that's sitting at the table and having the discussions. And part of that is because we have these streamlined issues, a streamlined process, the people that are at the table are empowered by your constituency to speak on behalf, have authority to make decisions, of course, upon subject to ratification, because that's the same way for us. But that's the only reason that we decided that we're proposing that it's 6 here, so we can make it a really workable group. But you still have the benefit, such as us, because this is us, this is our team. This is our team at the table. We, of course, have resource people that we will be caucusing with, speaking with, trying to get answers to questions that we need. But when we're negotiating and we're having these discussions, it's between the people sitting here and the people sitting there. So that's the reasoning and the justification behind that. It's not to cut your team member, but we're just talking about the people actually sitting at the table and having the discussion.
I'll definitely talk to the team about it. 2 things. One, obviously we don't want to have a 6-member bargaining team and everybody else isn't eligible for ABL, but I don't think that that's what y'all are trying to do. And then 2, it is logistically challenging for that row to hear what y'all are saying. And so I don't know if just next time, if it's possible, if we can have a back row, because otherwise we were kind of planning on swapping out so that everybody could filter through. And so whoever's up here, it'd be nice if the folks could hear better, because it's very difficult to hear back there.
I think logistics, just like how we set up the room, that's something that's definitely workable, depending on,
Yeah,
of course, the problem is that we're dealing with the video cameras and all of that stuff.
And I don't mind us sitting physically closer to y'all if that gets us a back row.
Yeah, I think this is not gonna be the next room. Well, depending on dates, it's various rooms. I think, I like 4001 best, the one kind of in the middle upstairs, but I don't think this is even one of the ones on our list for the next couple, but as we're setting up, we can try to, maybe not do that and maybe try to, but yeah, but for her purposes. And, if you need to hold off on that number decision until your next board meeting? Yep. Like,
I mean, I think
February
it's,
sometime.
it might, you know, let me talk to my team. It might be just what we call ourselves that, you know, y'all have divided your team into resource and the bargaining, you know, so it might just be what we call ourselves.
Yeah, and it's just so you know how we kind of do it. For example, like Matthew Schutz, Katie, they're all resource people. They're not part of the team. They're not decision makers, but they assist us, like Matthew, for promotions. You know, he does civil service testing, so he has certain expertise that he comes in and helps us with on occasion. And in the ground rules, we even have, you know, it may be that we call upon a resource person to present something to you or to answer a specific question, but they're not like part of the core decision-making team.
And I think our whole team are part of the core decision-making team, but it might be spokesperson with, you know, authority, et cetera, that we can define that internally.
Let's see, and then. I think everything else is the same until you except this one. Okay, the date.
On this one, we're proposing that we move, because I know we're fairly close apparently. We presented what the issues that we think that we're gonna put on the table and you have an idea of what your list is and you've stated it doesn't look very different. To address the concern, we went ahead and changed it to the next bargaining session so that we could start work on the core, you know, on the core item of the uniform staff definition and then move on from there. To address your concern that if we're moving forward and there's something that comes up that we're like, both, you know, either side's like, oh gosh, we didn't realize it was gonna impact this. That is why, in our original proposal, we had added this language, the specific articles and sections to be placed on the table for limited purposes of this reopener, except as by agreement of the parties. So if there is an impact and the parties agree that there's an impact on that article or, you know, as a result of redoing or negotiating one section, if we agree that it's on an impact, then it allows that. It allows that to continue, you know, to be discussed. Anything else?
Yeah, let me try to articulate that kind of how I'm envisioning it. I think we all need to know what we're bargaining. And we don't want any surprise issues coming down at the end of it. And not that you would intend to, or we would intend to, but at the same time, you know, we are not negotiating because it impacts me that so-and-so got a locker over here. You're not gonna bring that up, right? But if it's something that we haven't thought of and both jointly agree, oh, well, of course, yeah, we didn't even think about, you know, article whatever, or this particular section on, you know, sick leave, you know, of course, it's going to need to be dealt with. We can't just not deal with it. It's gotta be dealt with. This is the place to do it. It's a bargainable item. It's impacted by this. But we don't want to, in March, come up with something like, oh, we didn't know you were talking about that. And that's why we have like over and over, line by line, gone through the agreement and truly believe that we have everything on the table that we're talking about. We would ask that you do the same thing and have a really good faith list of everything that you want on there. And I think in turn, we need to have, you know, some date by which to do that. We were happy to give you, you know, till the next bargaining session. I think a month is pretty far out because we see these as very limited bargaining sessions based upon what we think is out there. And that just seems like a really late date. We were thinking the next bargaining session. If not, then maybe the third bargaining session, something like that. And we don't know scheduling wise how we're gonna do that yet. We'll hopefully figure that out today for a couple of meetings. But we really did want a finite time frame on that with both parties willingly, good faith. We're not, oh, well, you didn't say that to begin with. We're not gonna do it. I mean, we commit that we will absolutely, you know, in good faith, bring anything else in that needs to be brought in that you come up with later. We just want a finite list.
Yeah, I think for us, first we heard, you know, maybe a few bargaining sessions and we were thinking a pace of about one, you know, a week or so. And so that is about the 28th. And so it just made sense for us to put that date in. The other thing, yes, you know, we're not gonna be bargaining over lockers. But I think there are some issues that are going to be very, very important to us that y'all might not understand, and how it's related. And it does impact our folks, and we're learning, you know, the more conversations we have, how much it could potentially impact our folks. So we just want an opportunity to be able to bring up those issues, even if y'all don't quite understand. But we can try to draft some language that, might get us to that.
And then I believe, everything else is good. Yep. So I'll email that to y'all.
I don't know, so what are your thoughts on uniform staff and when and how to approach that? I know we had the legal people talk to the legal people to make sure that exactly, and I know there were a lot of things, sites and different statutes you wanted to have a chance to take a look at. We did not want to rush that at all, because we think that's one of the most critical pieces to the rest of the bargaining.
I definitely agree, and that's critical and really kind of sets us up for the rest of the bargaining on this. Reading through it, I'm definitely pleased that this is much different than the last legal interpretation that we saw. And I don't believe that we are far off. There's, as I read through it, there's just a few small things, that, you know, maybe just a little bit of usage that might.
Oh, and I'm sorry, Roxy's reminding me, we have not presented that publicly, so we should at least do that today.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm down for that right now. Like, you can present that as you want, and then we can discuss it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I hadn't clicked to that.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Unless they want to know what the heck we're talking about.
Let me go ahead and pull it up.
Thank you. And granted, within it, there are a lot of references to statutes, so the public may still not understand what we're talking about, but that's why we wanted to kind of have the legal analysis begun, at least.
Okay. So, while we're still mulling over our ground rules and et cetera, as the core item that we need to discuss first, of course, is what the uniform staff definition means. And so what we are proposing, oh, sure. We have taken, on Article 2 definitions, number 14, which is the definition of uniform staff. And we have the proposed changes, keeping in mind that the integration of the ACMA positions into the EMS, that there are going to be sworn positions and there are going to be non-sworn positions, correct? So we're defining what are going to be sworn positions under the uniform staff. And what we proposed is that uniform staff means a member of the bargaining unit represented by the association. And we made reference to subchapter D, the Texas Local Government Code, chapter 142, section 142.15822. And that's a statute that explains that the association represents sworn employee. And we just want to make sure that reference was in there because it wasn't in there before, and we're under 142. Including employees of the department who are appointed in substantial compliance with chapter 143. We took out R because if you're appointed in substantial compliance with 143, you are entitled to civil service status under chapter 143.005 and who provide emergency medical services. And this excluding, this is already in there, excluding the head of the department and persons appointed to the position and classification immediately below the head of the department. And that classification means the sworn positions. The term additionally excludes civilian employees, which are non-sworn positions, retirees, and any other employees specifically exempted by the terms of this agreement. Probationary employees are excluded from the coverage of Article 16 to not file grievances pursuant to Article 19 regarding disciplinary actions. Second part of this deposition, we proposed the term applies only to employees holding positions within the department that meet the following criteria. Letter A, employed in the department as emergency medical services personnel as defined by the Texas Health and Safety Code, Chapter 773.00310, and as further, which is as further defined under section 773.046 through 773.0495. And those sections taken as a whole explain statutorily who emergency medical services personnel are. And this is the second prong, and employees whose position requires or contemplates substantial knowledge of emergency pre-hospital care as defined by Texas Health and Safety Code, Chapter 773.
So under those, there was just a couple of questions I had. So first, the new under first part of 14, where it says entitled to civil service status under 143.005. Then it adds, and who provide emergency medical services. What is the reasoning for adding that phrase of and who provide emergency medical services? As emergency medical services is defined under 773, and that is also would be incorporated under the following section where we discuss terms that apply to employees. So I'm curious because it almost seems superfluous to have that phrase in there, and it seems almost that it may end up being limiting from what that term encompasses
Yeah.
below.
So it is above, it's conjunctive. It's intentionally conjunctive. In the bottom, you'll see only. So the bottom part is limiting, the top part is more inclusive. So it's very intentional, in other words.
Okay.
It's not, oh, we just kind of, it's very intentional from,
What was that intent?
the intent is that employees who are appointed in compliance with 143, who are entitled to civil service statute, must be providing emergency medical services to be considered here. It's further defined below, and it limits it with another conjunctive add-on, as you'll see. But it's not, I mean, it's very intentional to comply and take away. So the 142 part's clear, right?
Mhm.
The part that wasn't there in the past was and to provide emergency medical services. And the problem that we'd had in the past was if they weren't providing emergency medical services, but you had the additional tier coming in from OCMO, there's that other definition, and for the public, I apologize, but for Houston's purposes, I want to explain it so that he knows exactly what to look for as he digs into the statutes. So when you add the further limitations that are placed upon the licensed nurses, the nurse practitioners, the PAs that has them riding the ambulance, we wanted to additionally make sure that we added this in so that that wasn't a restrictive measure riding the ambulance as the prior legal opinion had been. We saw that as problematic. We talked about the problems with it, and it wasn't true. It just wasn't fully flushed out. So the legal opinion under which we are now working on behalf of the city doesn't have the limitation of they have to be on an ambulance, but they do have to provide emergency medical services under the statute, which is different than just being regularly assigned to an ambulance. It's broader.
So it's more like and or.
Well, it's and
So
here, and then below, it's you have one of the certifications, and will you move that a little bit further down? Sure. So on the bottom, it's the pre-hospital care that's added in. So that way your call takers aren't excluded. There were things that under the old definition, it's not that the old definition was just flat out wrong. It just hadn't contemplated everybody. And we believe that this is much more, covers much more of the department and is much more specific. So I would encourage you to really dig into exactly how it's worded and then absolutely give us a call.
I definitely will, because like, what my question is, it kind of stems from, so emergency medical services is defined 773.0038. And so that means services used to respond to an individual's perceived need for immediate medical care, prevent death or aggravation. And so my concern is some of our current uniformed staff that are not doing exactly as defined emergency medical services that may be involved in training, that may be involved who are currently temporarily assigned to billing because they are injured, or they're assigned to supply because they're on light duty. And so at what point, because then that now starts to become an exclusionary as opposed to an inclusive, which I believe your intent was to be
Yeah.
more inclusive.
Yeah.
And so that is where my concern comes in, is that because emergency medical services is a statutorily defined term,
So can you move back a bit?
that it can then go to excluding people who were sworn or were uniform staff under a prior contract, but if we were to apply this to a technical
Yeah,
sense,
yeah.
that it could be exclusionary.
Yeah, and so what we're trying to do when we morphed into the holding positions within the department, it's not the temporary individual who's assigned to this, it's what position do you actually hold? So that's part of the answer to the second half of your question. To the first part of your question, it also, in that definition of emergency services, I believe refers to 773 under the occupation code, which has those secondary definitions to make it more clear, which, will you go down again? I know you're looking at
I
something
think
else.
the
at the
question
same
is
time.
because it says and in
Yes.
in this first part of the section means that they must have both, that they must be doing both, as opposed to, like, I know we go further into, defining these actual personnel. But because the first part is going to be, I guess, the higher authority of when we break it down by section, that section is going to dictate what that bottom one, what the lower one would also encompass. That's where the concern is that we might be missing some folks by having that and providing.
Right,
And
and
so that's something that I'd like for us to look at.
yeah, happy to look at that. It's very intentional the way we have it, and Roxy looks like she's pulled something up here.
Do you want me to just read? Well,
You
from the,
can,
from the
absolutely,
statute,
absolutely.
this is, we got the term emergency medical services from chapter 773. It's in the definitions, 773.003, 8. Okay. And emergency medical services means services used to respond to an individual's perceived need for immediate medical care and to prevent death or aggravation of physiological or psychological illness or injury. So that's the meaning that we're using pursuant to the statute in that emergency medical services.
And I totally understand
Yeah.
that, and like, I get the intent behind it. My concern is that there are positions currently and potentially within the department for people who have been sworn and potentially will be sworn that do not
Okay.
provide emergency medical services by statute,
Right.
by the definition under the statute.
But let's look at that jointly with the legal departments. If you're actually talking about a billing clerk, that may be something that we are intentionally believing needs to be excluded, and it may not be a difference in definition, just in who we think belongs in there. And I'm not saying that that's the case, but that was the example used. So it may be, let's do a sidebar and have the attorney sit down and just dig into it, because we are not trying to, we want to give you time to fully understand at least what we're proposing, and then if you don't agree to it, respond. So let's. You
You have
get
to
some-
remember, the whole basis and the intention of this is to integrate, those new positions, so that.
Yeah, we just don't want to integrate those new positions and then also exclude people like in our PIO office, people in our academy that primarily do not provide emergency medical services.
Yeah, we tried to, utilizing the other definition that we'd had, we realized that that would exclude some people who were currently sworn. We are not trying to exclude anybody who is currently sworn. And we believe that the definition is inclusive of all of those who should be sworn. We could be wrong. It's obviously very complicated. So we're happy to sit down and hash that out as to at least what the intent is. And then if we have different intents as to who should be in the unit and out of the unit, that's a different question, right? But let's make sure that we're at least on the same page. So I would offer.
I was wondering if you could speak to this. I noticed that you look like you might be able to speak to this.
I just want to maybe,
Some clarity.
what we've talked about before is clarifying individuals versus job descriptions.
Yes.
So while somebody may be on an assignment that is in a, limited scope of not responding, their job description may still be field clinical specialist. That's still a responder that meets the definition of this. I think it's the same thing for anybody that's on limited duty, things like that. What really goes back to is versus the individual on that particular day, it's what their job description is, which is ultimately what, the scope of their work it should be. And certainly things happen when we reassign people into spots and people are on limited duty for a number of reasons. But I think it really goes back to what their job description is and what position they actually hold versus what's happening that day.
Yeah, and we were trying to be very specifically intentional, especially bringing over the paramedic practitioners. And I'll use Selena as an example because she's a wonderful example. Selena happens to be a nurse. Selena's job description as captain does not require her to be a nurse. So the fact that she is a nurse has nothing to do with the fact that she's sworn or unsworn. I happen to carry a certification sort of thing. It's great that you do, don't get me wrong, but that because that's not part of her job requirements, job description sort of thing. So we were trying to be very intentional as we brought over people who we knew had the higher credential and who we knew were subject to the other law, which brought the confusion to begin with about also having to be on an ambulance. That's why there's a lot of ands in here. We want to make sure that we're not inadvertently excluding somebody because they're not on an ambulance. So.
And so on that question, like what you were just saying, whenever y'all were thinking this chief is, would a public information officer fall?
I think we're still working through
Like,
the
under the
exact, like I told you
job
earlier, we're not
descriptions.
ready to tell you which positions today, but we hope to by our next meeting.
Well, I mean, and
But
those
I
are ones,
think it's gonna
CEOs are
be
existing sworn.
current, I'm asking about
Oh, current
current
sworn?
current
Oh, I-
sworn positions. What, like for
So those
those
individuals.
who are at the academy, and I apologize.
Those individuals all they're in job descriptions already. So there's a clinical specialist, there's a captain, well, it's two captains, and we have a commander that are over there. Those are the job descriptions that they are already fitting into, which require them to have a certification as a, EMS professional and all of that, and they are assigned to a specific role within the department. So those don't change because it's still part of their job description. They can be called into service to do those things, and do. So yes, they would still remain sworn.
But I also think it's gonna be a lot easier, and y'all weren't here when we promised this to Houston, but we don't have, it would be so much easier right now, this very second, and we commit to having this for you, is we can just tell you, you know what, here's the 2 job descriptions, here's the 10 job titles that we intend are not in the union, just so that you know exactly what we're talking about, and so that we can talk that through. We're not bargaining that through this definition, but we want to be able to tell you so you can eyes wide open, okay, now I see. Because that's going to be a lot easier picture for you to take in, I think, once we say it's all of these. And we're still finalizing, exactly, are all these job descriptions staying the same or any of them changing? So we want to be able to and all appropriately within the legal definition, but we want to make sure we agree on the legal definition too.
I think and that's just kind of what I'm wrestling with is when it comes to like the PIO, or just folks who specifically work in the academy, while they could be called to the field and could be called to go do something, generally they're not. And the way that the phrase is an active phrase, and not a hypothetical. And so it is and who provide, as opposed to who could provide. And so, and I'm not saying that's the right change.
No, and I
but it
would
seems
tell you,
active versus
Yeah. I
hypothetical.
would tell you the part at the bottom where we have only 2 employees holding, can you move it again a little further down? Where we have added in the word or contemplates, that means they don't necessarily have to regularly do it, but that their job description contemplates that they could be required to do it. If whatever circumstances arise, the chief would have the authority to say, hey, go do X, Y, or Z, and that the job description contemplates that. So it's not a mandatory, they have to be, and that was kind of the impetus behind that, is so that it would be a broader. We'll retake a look at the word and
Well, and I think-
on the top, but I think
I do
it's
think that contemplates, muses, whatever word we fit in there. I do think that goes to the goal that we're
Yeah.
trying to create, that we're trying to reach at the broadness.
You just want to make sure it meshes
I'm
with
just
the and on
sure,
the
yeah,
top.
I just want to make
Gotcha.
sure that the and who provides, since that
Yeah.
is an active phrase,
Yeah, and I think the
that.
best way for us to all do that is not just for us to take a look at that, but for the attorneys to sit down and look at it jointly so that it can just be hashed out. Because I don't think we're going to be in different legal opinions on it. I think we're all reaching for the same statute and it reads that way or it doesn't, you know?
And just one more point of just a clarification. If somebody moves out of fleet, will they change to civilian? I think I'm trying to get, and this is just some questions that some of the folks are asking for us. If somebody has to change their job for whatever reason, because we have some people that get injured and never can go back to doing what they were doing, for whatever purpose. At that point, the ones that were sworn, if they get moved out of that, I guess, fleet is the way that is being described, how does that change to civilian?
Okay, so I would tell you, I don't know what you mean by the term fleet, and the chief isn't familiar enough with the legal definition to be able to answer that for you. So do you mean field?
Let me come back on it and make sure that
Okay.
I'm getting the.
So you're
I
asking
think I
about-
understand the question, but you and I can talk about it.
Okay, yeah,
Okay, and I promise last question,
never make that promise, Houston.
as I smile. So in subsection A, as further defined, I'm just wondering if y'all are amenable to looking at that language as becoming more including those positions, because the ones under 10, under 773-00310 are not all, analogous with those other ones that are listed.
Actually, they are.
They're all, I just want to make
Actually,
sure that we're not going to
look
exclude
at
some
that
of
with
the
you.
EMT basic.
We can look at that with you because I believe they are the exact same titles that are right there.
Okay.
But we'll look at it jointly.
Thank you. Other than that, we're in agreement on everything. Like usual.
Yeah, so I think the best use of this particular one is to have the attorneys sit down, hash it through, and then, we rely upon our legal department, so, if we have any remaining questions, then we'll turn to that attorney, which is not bad, which is what I'm pointing out, to answer fully our question on that if we have any further questions.
I appreciate it.
So, on our responses on the ground rules is that, so I take it that you need a little more time on that. Do we have anything else for today? Do we want to start looking at some dates? Do we want to,
We're happy to share more about what other sections and articles that we right now want to look at.
that would be great.
Rob, if you want to pull up the article, the contract that y'all had highlighted, I will just flag and stop.
I gotta pull it up. Let me see. Yeah, it should be, that should be on the name somewhere. Highlighted. Sure. Okay.
So y'all y'all put Article 1. Y'all put we both agree that Article 2 in the same locations.
1 and 14.
The next article, y'all have Article 5. And then the next article, we have Article 6, which we both agree. Y'all had section 1, 2. We actually wanted to add section 2. Y'all have section 3.
Wait, are you in?
Which
six?
article
Are you
are
in
you on?
Article 6?
I'm in Article 6.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, you wanted to add section 2
Two.
is what you're saying? Hang on.
Article 6, we would add section 2. My highlight yours in green.
Okay, section 9.
If you're not mentioning it here, like 5 and 7, do you agree with those, I presume?
Right now, correct, yes.
Sorry, what did you just say, section 9?
And then the rest are articles that we either agree with or articles that y'all have flagged, or sections that y'all have flagged. We also just wanted to make a note that Appendix A should also go with Article 6.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then the next one is Article 8. That's y'all's. Or we agree with that.
Section 3.
Article 9. We'd like to add section 1. And then we jump down to Article 12. There are obviously quite a few places where we need to add brand new language, right? So that's not a defined section yet. But under section C,
You mean part C or second C? Part C. This is that crazy.
yeah.
Okay.
We absolutely agree with you on those sections. We also wanted to add section 16.
Section 16, reappointment of uniform staff.
And then part D. Section 7.
Wait, hang on one second. Okay, go ahead. Sorry. Just catching up.
No. And then we would agree with all the other sections that you mentioned in Article 12.
What did you say about part D? I'm sorry.
Part D, section 7.
Section 7. Just a second.
And then the next one is Article 13. And I think we have agreement on all the sections that y'all listed. Again, we plan on adding an Article 17, which is about clinical reviews.
When you say adding an Article 17, you're adding a new article into the,
Yeah, it just belongs there.
After the disciplinary, that seems to be the fit as far as placement in the contract.
And then just renumber afterwards.
So we're calling it new Article 17, but we'll obviously go off the old article numbers and talk about the rest of it. And then y'all had Article 23, and then we both agree that Article 26 will be completely redone.
what was the new Article 17 called?
Clinical reviews process. It's a function under the office of chief.
And then after 17, Selena,
That's it. Everything else, is something that y'all already brought up. And then somebody is alerting me that, it's difficult for, oh, excuse me, Article 10 also, we already talked about the
Oh.
Article 10.
would it be all sections?
It would be, scroll up, it would be section 4
Section 4.
and, section 1. There's also, and this is kind of why I was. This is also kind of why we have the opinion that we want February in order to bring up things, because things like literally just keep popping up, but, especially depending on, you know, we heard, an idea brought up about the clinical division, and that's not something that we were necessarily, thinking about, and we like the idea. But if we do that, then there's issues about crossover. And so then we're talking about back to, Article 12, Part C, Section, 2, which is about crossover transfers. So at this time, you know, I was reminded that we should have added that as to the list of potential areas. So I think those cascading effects are some of the issues that we wanted to give ourselves a little bit of space after we even put up some of our initial, after we got to see everybody's initial offers.
So crossovers in the Article 12.
Yes, I believe that's section 2 currently, yeah.
It's in the current Part C, Section 2.
Okay.
C.
So besides that, we're ready to look at dates. And I also, wanted to touch base about, how y'all felt like which articles, who goes first. Because, you know, we do have a bunch of drafts in a bunch of different places. And it's up to y'all if y'all want to present some articles first. I think the ones where y'all definitely, brought up that we didn't share, like 1, 5, we'd obviously bring forward 10. But I don't know if y'all have another way of how you want to go about the other articles.
Do you want to do the simple ones first? And what I mean by that is the ones that have the date or the new, you know, that sort of, that are obvious ones. And I don't know what your contemplation, and maybe we should just kind of talk this out to begin with. Not knowing how long the negotiations are gonna take. I'm with 4 days, it could be 90, who knows? And that we're kind of putting May 1 in there as a placeholder, knowing that that particular date may change the very last day of the, like if we finish on February 28 and wanna make it first full pay period after, give it a couple of weeks, but I mean, move that date. I think we're just putting May 1 in as a placeholder. So if you see that, don't be offended by that date, because we can just go through and replace all May 1s with October or if, whatever, so, but on those, we have prepared quite a few as well of the kind of simple ones that are just more housekeeping than, obviously, I think, we're gonna have a lot more discussion on hiring and promotions, that sort of thing. So maybe simple ones first, if that makes sense. We probably can figure out which ones those are pretty easily, and just email back and forth in the meantime as to we should present. I don't care who presents them first. We have simple ones drafted already.
Yeah, because
We're working on more difficult ones as well, and actually should have those done in short order too. But I don't have a preference. If you have a strong preference on order, let us know.
Sure. I think, to my count, and we can email back and forth about this, but there seems like there are 4 articles that are probably considered easy. And even in that gets into substantive stuff, to me, that's Article 1, 5, 23, and 8. And I think if Roxy and Houston can work out Article 2, we can potentially add that too, since they've already done substantial work, or since Roxy's already done substantial work and Houston's started to take a look. And then I can talk to my team if we in general have any preference on the other articles.
One, 5, 8.
23.
You already have drafts on those. 23. What is 23? That's the term. Yeah, the only thing with like 23 and 1, just so you know, that we'll tell you ahead of time, we're trying to capture how the new contract will read. And we have envisioned it such that the new contract will, I'm gonna use the day May 1st, okay, but that's a made-up date. It begins May 1st, but we realized there was a contract between October and May 1st. But we also realized that there was that waiver of these things. So we're trying to capture all that language and make sure that we get it right. So we'll probably finish those draftings and send it to Houston ahead of time to make sure that kind of we're on the same page as to how the new document's gonna look. Because we wanna negotiate article by article, but we also wanna make sure that the final document, when you get in front of an arbitrator for a grievance or something, you have a document instead of, well, there's that, go back to that one, go back to, so that it's a workable product. And I'll probably like you to hash that through on a brainstorming session. I know what her brain tells me. I don't know what yours will say, but hopefully you'd be on the same page. But I think that would be helpful on those sorts of legal conversations to have those offline ahead of time, and then we can easily present them if you're in agreement. If not, then again, we'll at least know that you're not in agreement. Sense. See.
So if you want to start looking at dates then.
And we have a couple of dates that we can propose to you. I have them up on my screen, which of course they're no longer, so let me find them. Oh, that's the document I lost. Sylvia, did you happen to write down what dates?
The
that is?
dates?
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. That's my save the empty document one.
We have Thursday, the 8th. Oh, that's off, right?
Yeah, that, we're getting, sorry.
So it's Friday, the 9th, Monday, the 12th, and Tuesday, the 13th. And Monday is 11 to 3 and Tuesday is until 2 p.m.
Will you say those dates one more time?
Let's see, what did I have? Friday, the 9th, Monday, the 12th, and Tuesday, the 13th.
And Monday, the 12th was 11 to 3.
Correct.
Tuesday, the 13th is until 2.
Correct.
So I think I shared with you that the team, to make it easier, we kind of had place held Wednesdays and Fridays because Mondays are bad for a lot of the admin folks. So, that Friday, the 9th works great. That Friday, the 16th.
I don't think we've checked rooms for the 16th, have we? I think she's in the 16th. I don't think the 16th is gonna work.
Okay. Well, I'll look at with our team, if you send an email over those dates. I just know what I have, like that we had discussed Wednesdays and Fridays, so I can confirm that.
You had mentioned that, I had not clicked that was I mean, you kind of said that and I didn't click that as an ongoing thing for whatever reason, because the way you stated it did sound like an ongoing thing, but it didn't click in my head that way.
But if you send over the dates, we can look, but for sure the 9th works.
Okay. So we will go ahead and post for the 9th. And reserve caucus terms and give that all to you. In the meantime, I certainly think that you guys can get together and chat about some different things and hopefully make some progress.
And we might just want to pass over emails about just how much work we anticipate each article being, so we can kind of gauge also like what we might be able to do first, what we know is gonna take longer.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you think, I mean, we could think about posting meetings for 11 and then sending articles the night before if we can, and that giving you a couple of hours with the team to review them a little better instead of us kind of. You want to try that? Let's start posting for 11.
And definitely if Roxy and Houston wanna, talk about some legal stuff in the meantime, so that,
Absolutely. I just like to confirm that publicly so that people don't think these two are cutting a deal behind the scenes. They always come back with the actual language to the team, so. Okay, I guess that calls it a day. All right, okay, good deal. Nice to see everyone. Thank you so much.